Hello again, YouTubers. Welcome back to the Board Game Captain. I'm your host, the Board Game Captain, and today I'm going to be reviewing and showing you how to play Cursed Court. So, a quick little aside, I would like to thank Atlas Games for sending me this pre-release copy of Cursed Court to play and review. Cursed Court is a game themed around a fantasy world medieval style court where each of the players are playing minor members of the nobility who are attempting to wager their influence with the members of the king's court in order to have their power rise. Now, the game itself mechanically is a wagering game with a bit of bluffing, and it really feels like it is a game that directly evolved from the sort of wagering that you would have in classic games like 7-Card Stud or Texas Hold'em. In addition, there is a little bit that reminds me of the wagering in totally random casino games like roulette or craps, even though this game is not random. This is a game with a lot of strategy and reading your opponents and bluffing and is a much more involved than that. It's just, you'll see what I'm saying when I'm showing you how to play, that it has a similar feel with the different spaces on the board for how you put your bets down. Now, this game was published by Atlas Games, and it was designed by Andrew Hansen with art by Lee Moyer. The game is for 2 to 6 players, ages 14 and up, for 30 to 45 minutes. Now, I'd like to start there. Now, with a game like this that plays 2 to 6 players, the big question is always, does it really play 2 to 6 players? Is this more of a 3 to 6 player game? And that's a question I ask with a lot of games like this, but this is one that does play pretty well at 2 players. There are some alternate rules that they put in specifically for 2 and 3 player games. They play slightly different than the 4 to 6 player version of the game, but they were necessary rule adjustments and they work. The game still plays and still has a very similar feel to the larger version of the game. The full version of the game, though, of course, is the 4 to 6 player version. Now, the 14 and up, I think, is a little bit of an overestimate. There is a lot of reading your opponents and bluffing and figuring out what wagers to do. And while that is the sort of thing that if you're older, you'll probably be automatically better at, if you're playing with your kids, I think they really won't have that much trouble understanding it, though. You might have to handicap yourself by not playing to your full potential, but I think kids as young as 10 might be able to play this because the rules themselves are not really that overly complex. It's more of a lighter midweight game in regard to complexity of rules. Now, the 30 to 45 minutes is a really good estimate, and the 45 is really just for larger player counts because I haven't had any games go close to the full 45 minutes yet. This is a nice quick game in that regard. It never outstays its welcome. Now let's have a look at what comes in the box if you buy a copy of Cursed Court. So the first thing we have here is the rule book. Now the rule book is full color. It has, as far as I can tell, 0 ambiguities, which I gotta, if you watch my videos fairly regularly, you know that one of my big pet peeves is poorly done rulebooks, and this is a very well done rulebook. Everything is explained perfectly. I understood it the first time reading through. They have examples. There's nice artwork, which makes it just very visually pleasing. And it's all fits. All of the rules fit in a grand total of 5 pages, which includes the alternate rules. So it's not super overcomplicated for what it is. And the alternate rules are actually quite nice. There's some very interesting differences. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the alternate rules when I'm doing the review portion of this video. Now, the next thing I want to show you is the board. Now, I quite like the board. The board is very aesthetically pleasing. It repeats the artwork that is on the cards, and then it has different colored spaces with symbols on them to show you exactly what it is that you are betting on. But they could have gone plainer, and they didn't, and I'm glad they didn't, because I think that this makes a very nice board to have out on the table. It looks very, very aesthetically pleasing. You've got a score tracker that goes around the outside, which is very necessary for the game. You have pictures of the 9 different types of cards that are in the deck here, and then you have all of these other spaces, which each one has a symbol on it, which shows you specifically which ones of the cards it is referring to. So in the case of the ritual here, it shows you it's the 3 cards in the center. I'm just going to show you that there. And that is what you're betting on. You're betting that those 3 cards in the center are going to come up during this game. Now, the next thing I want to show you is the cards. Now, the cards are quite important for this game. You have a deck of cards. There are no suits. It's just those 9 characters. Each one of those 9 characters has 4 copies of their card in it. Now, my one criticism of the board is that they didn't also put the name of the characters on there, but this is a minor criticism. So for instance, this character here, he does have his name. He is the assassin, whereas this character here is the Duke. I do wish they had put the names on the board, but again, that is a very minor criticism. The artwork on these cards is fantastic. I really like it. It's very characterful. Even though the theme itself does feel a bit pasted on, I enjoy the artwork and I enjoy the medieval aesthetic of the game. Now, the components here, let's start with these plastic coins. So you've got these plastic coins. Now, they are identical except for color, and you have one color for each possible player. So you've got a dark purple, a white, a red, a yellow, a green, and an orange. And on one side of each of these coins, you have this flowery crown, and on the other, you have what appears to be a snake. And these are nice, thick plastic. They feel very solid. You can hear that. These are really good components. I cannot actually emphasize that enough. They could have used cardboard chits for these, but they just would not have been as good. This is exactly the level of production I like to see in this level of game. Now, the next thing you have are your wager crowns. Each player gets 4 crowns, and these are to symbolize that you are wagering on something. Also very nicely done plastic pieces. When you wager on something, you take a crown and a number of coins you're willing to wager, and you put those under the crown, and you place them on what you are wagering on the board. So this would be a 3-coin wager right there. The first player token in this is a thick, chunky cardboard piece. I have to admit, with these very lovely plastic coins, I'm slightly disappointed that they didn't do a nice big plastic coin for the first player marker. But you know, it's just a first player marker, and as a first player marker, it's a nice little piece of artwork there, and it looks fine and it does its job. And then the final bit of components are just some plain wooden discs. Not a whole lot to talk about there. I do like that they chose to make these wood. It makes them nice and they feel substantial. And these are just used to score, and also there is these are used to score your points when you're playing the game. And I said this was the final thing, but one other thing I do want to draw attention to is the insert. Because actually, this is a really, really nice insert. As you can see here, the scoring tokens go under here, and then there is a area above it for the cards, and you have a side that is goes all the way down to the bottom of where the cards go, so it's very easy to pull the whole deck out. You have an area here to keep the crowns, and you have slots for each of the groups of coins, and then everything fits in this box perfectly and easily. The board and the rulebook then go on top and keep it all in, so this is a very well done insert. Now that's everything that comes in the box for Cursed Court. So let's head over to the table. I'm going to run you through a few turns and show you how this game plays, and then we're going to come back and I'm going to talk about how it feels. I'm going to review it and rate it, and we're going to get a second opinion from Len. Okay, so here we can see a 4-player game of Cursed Court set up. So to set up the game, the first thing you need to do is you need to put the board in the middle of the table. Then each player takes their 20 coins and their 4 wager crowns, and then the deck is shuffled and a card is dealt between each of the players. So for instance, this card here is between the orange and purple player, while this card here is between the red and purple player. That card over there is between the green and red player, and the final card over here is between the orange and the green players. Now, each player is allowed to look at the cards to their left and right. So for instance, the purple player here can look at this card and this card, so they know what is there. I'm going to show them to the camera. This is what they have with those two cards, and they share that information, at least half of it, with each player to their left and right, because the orange player is allowed to look at this card, but they have no idea what's over here, and the red player is allowed to look at this card, but they have no idea what is over here. So you have to try to read your opponents based on what they're wagering on to figure out what the other cards might be. Now, the game is separated into 3 years. Each year is separated into 4 seasons or rounds. And during each round, you're going to be placing one of your bets. By the end of the year, you will have placed all 4 of your bets, and then we will count points up. Everyone gets all their coins and their crowns back, and you do it all again. You do it 3 times, and then whoever has the highest score wins. In order to score, you score based on whether you were wagering on a character or a specific combination of characters. If you bet on a character, depending on how many of them wind up in the tableau, you get 1 point for 1 copy of the character, 2 points for 2 copies of the character, 5 points for 3 copies, and 8 for 4 copies. If you bet on a specific combination, you get points based on how many particular characters needed to come up for that combination. There are 3 character combinations, which give you 3 points if you're correct, and 4 character combinations, which give you 4 points if you're correct. So now we're going to take you through a year to show you how this goes. One last thing I want to tell you about is how to outbet an opponent. If someone wagers on a particular thing and you want to knock their wager off and take it for yourself, you need to wager at least twice as many coins as they wagered. So there is a 2-coin bet. A 5-coin bet is more than twice as many, and that will knock them off. They will get to wager again, though, to either try to outwager for this spot or to wager for somewhere else, because at the end of every season, everyone has to have the same number of wagers on the board. So at the very beginning of each year, we have the spring turn, and the first thing you would normally do is pass the first player marker. However, in 2 and 4 player turns, you don't pass the first player marker during the spring. So the next thing we do is we just deal 1 face-up card into the tableau. So the first face-up card, which everyone knows is there, is the Queen. Her Royal Highness the Queen has showed up. So now everyone is aware that the Queen is going to be in the tableau at the end of this round. But of course, everyone is not aware of what 2 of the face-down cards are going to be that are going to be added to the tableau. So starting with the purple player, they're going to take a quick look at what they have available to themselves, and they're going to place a 5-coin wager on the chapel. Followed by the orange player is going to take a quick look at what they have to their left and right, and they are going to place a 5-coin wager on the sacrifice. Now, the sacrifice here means that they believe these 3 characters are going to turn up. The chapel, which purple bet on, means they believe these 4 characters are all going to wind up in the tableau by the end of this year. So now it is green's turn. They're going to have a look to their cards to the left and right. And what is green going to do? What is green going to do?
Green is going to bet on the regicide.
5-coin bet on the regicide. Now, how about red? What is red going to do?
Red is going to bet on the jester.
So now the first season has gone by. So now we move on to the second season, summer. We pass the first player marker to orange, and we flip up 1 more card into the tableau. And it is the assassin. So we are aware that the assassin is definitely going to, at least 1 copy is definitely going to be out there. So starting with orange is going to have a look at the cards to the left and right again. And orange is going to jump on a 5-coin bet on the assassin. So now it is green's turn. And green is 10-coin bet on the assassin and knock orange off. So orange's bet has been doubled there. And now what is red going to do?
Red is going to bet on the wedding.
Red is going to bet on the wedding, huh? So now it is purple's turn. And let's see. Red bet on the wedding. That is interesting. So purple decides to do a 3-coin bet on the feast. So now the summer is over, and the first player.
Orange has to.
Oh, orange, thank you. Orange actually got bumped off, so orange has one more bet to go before the year is up. So orange is going to have a look around, and orange is going to do a 2-coin bet on the tower. So now that the season is over, we're going to move on to autumn, where green will be the first player, and the new card that comes up is the priestess. So now it is green's turn to place a wager.
Green is going to place 2 coins on the priestess.
Fair enough. And red?
Red is going to bet on the procession.
Procession?
Procession.
Procession. You seem to have trouble with that word. Procession. Procession.
I don't know.
It's procession. Okay, so purple is going to do a 4-coin bet to outbet green on the priestess. And then orange is decided to do an 8-coin bet to outbet purple on the priestess and knock them off. At which point it is green's turn again.
Green is going to bet on the scandal.
Okay, and purple is going to do a 5, let's see. Purple is going to do a 10-coin bet and knock red off the wedding. And then it's back to red, who is one, and they're going to bet on the Duke. So now we are ready for our final season in this year, which is the winter, and a second priestess came up. So orange is feeling pretty confident about their bet there. Where is red going to place their final bet?
Red is going to bet on the queen.
That's a pretty good bet. We know there's at least one queen out there. Purple's going to do a 2-coin bet on this character here. Orange is going to do, let's see, a 5-coin bet on the king. And then where is green's final bet going?
Try on the revolt.
On the revolt. Okay. So at which point all the bets for this year have been placed. We now flip up all of the cards face up and we show who has joined us here, what cards have joined us here in the tableau. Now the tableau is organized in the exact same way as the characters appear on the board. So as you can see, these 3 characters did not show up at all, whereas these 6 did. So now we go through the bets and see which ones paid off and which ones did not. So the procession, for instance, did not pay off because it would have required all 3 of these characters, and the top character here, the courtesan, did not come up. So that bet is removed. However, the wager on the jester did pay off, as did the priestess, but the wager here on the scandal also did not pay off, again, because the courtesan did not come up. The wager on the queen paid off just fine. This wager on the chapel paid off, and the wager on the tower, as well as the wager on the sorceress paid off. Now, this wager on the regis side did not pay off, but the wager on the revolt did pay off, as did the wager on the sacrifice, the assassin, the duke, and the wedding, though the king and the feast did not pay off. So those wagers are all removed. And then we check, one player at a time, how many points they got from their wagers and give them their score. So starting with the purple player here, we will check, and the purple player wagered on the sorceress. There is one sorceress, so they get 1 point for purple, based on the sorceress having one sorceress in the tableau. They also wagered on the chapel. All 4 characters for the chapel showed up. That gives them another 4 points, bringing them up to 5. And then they correctly wagered on the wedding, which gives them another 3 points, which is a fairly good score. 8 points is pretty good. Now, Orange wagered on the priestess, and 2 copies of the priestess came up, so that is worth 2 points. Orange also wagered correctly on the tower, which gives them another 4 points. And they also correctly wagered on the sacrifice, which gives them another 3, which makes them just squeak out a lead over purple. So how did green do?
Green got the revolt for 3 points.
1, 2, 3, and
2 assassins for 2 points.
So that brings them up to 5, and now red looks like they did a little better.
1 point for the duke.
Wrong one. There we go.
1 point for the queen. 1 point for the jester.
So actually,
I don't know how that's better.
Well, it looked like because they had more bets, but it actually did not. And that's the interesting thing. Those more bets did not equal more points, because each one of those was only a single copy of that character. So that's it. Now, that is 1 year. You play through 3 years, and then whoever has the highest score at the end of 3 years wins the game of Cursed Court. Now, I do want to just quickly draw attention to some of the rules for different player sizes, as well as some of the alternate rules that are in the back of the book. So first off, for a 3-player game, a 3-player game plays exactly the same as a 4 or more player game, except that 2 cards are dealt face down between each pair of players. Now, a 2-player game plays a little differently. In a 2-player game, 2 cards are dealt directly to each of the 2 players, and you do not know what is in your opponent's pair of cards. There is no shared information in a 2-player game. In that way, the 2-player game feels a little closer to 7 stud than to Texas Hold'em, because there's less shared information. You do still share the few cards that are face up, as always, but those cards are not shared between, the face down cards are not shared information between you and anyone else. Now, there are 4 different optional sets of rules, and one of which Lynn and I like, that I want to draw attention to, that we think is a very interesting optional rule, is a rule where there is no bumping of other players off of bets. It is a rule called the coinless court, in that it recommends each player take just their 4 crowns, though, and you can show them from north to south who has wagered first, second, third on an area. Now, I personally don't like doing it that way. I prefer to do it with 4 coins instead of 4 crowns, because with the smaller things, it's kind of hard to fit multiple crowns on these smaller spaces. But if you use coins instead, you can just stack them like this, and you can see who has bet first, second, or third. You get -1 point or 1 point less if you bet later in this alternate version of the game. And this is a very interesting alternate version, and it really turns this almost into a completely different game. So there you have it. There's an idea of how the game of Cursed Court plays, as well as some of the different rules for different player counts and some of the optional rules. So now let's head back. We're going to discuss how this game feels. I'm going to rate it and review it, and then we're going to get a second opinion from Lynn. Welcome back. So that was how you play a game of Cursed Court. Now, first thing I really need to talk about with this game is the lack of glaring negatives that I have to talk about when talking about this game. All of my negatives feel nitpicky. So the rulebook is really well done. I've got nothing bad to really draw attention to there. The components are perfect for the level of the game that this is. There's quite a lot of games where I always feel they're either underproduced or overproduced. And now, what do I mean by that? So the board is exactly big enough for how big it needs to be, and it's pretty enough that it's visually appealing on the table. The plastic coins are great. They feel substantial enough, and they're sturdy enough, and they're nice enough that they work. If they had just done cardboard punch-outs, that would have felt more underproduced. If they had done metal coins, that would have felt overproduced and would have felt like they were needlessly increasing the cost of the game just to put in metal components. At these, the level it's at with these thick plastic components just feels right. And generally speaking, I mean, it's not that this is a perfect game. I mean, there's no such thing as a perfect game. But But all of these things definitely go into my rating of this game because of how well this game is done. Now, this is a game from a company that has mostly done smaller card games and some role-playing games before now. And now they're starting to, with this and a couple others, move into the larger board game area. And this is how you do it. This is very well done. So I definitely want to talk about that. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is the game itself. So the game feels like a modern wagering game, which is something we don't see that much of. So just its uniqueness really earns points with me. I mean, I can't think of another game that captures the same sort of strategy and fun and feeling from games like Texas Hold'em and 7 Stud in a modern way. In fact, the only other wagering game I currently have in my collection is Colossal Arena, which does have a wagering aspect, but doesn't feel at all like those games, Texas Hold'em and 7 Stud. So in that way, this has the potential to be a modern classic in the future, in that it can be one of those games that replaces those classic games for you. And I love those games that replace classic games, because whenever I have someone over who has not played much in the way of modern games, and I ask them, I say, well, what were some of your favorite classic games? And they name specific games that I have a modern replacement for, I can just grab that one off the shelf. And in this case, if someone says, well, I'm a big poker player and I love poker, I'd say, you know what, we got to try Cursed Court. And I think that's really, really awesome. And as for the level of fun, this is a very enjoyable game. I have had a lot of fun with Cursed Court. I really like outbetting people and outmaneuvering people and trying to read people and figure out, based on what they're betting on, what cards might be on the other side of the table. And I find that really enjoyable. And for all these reasons, I give Cursed Court 8 out of 10 stars. And that's because I have thoroughly enjoyed playing it. I just asked to play this game again last night. I've been playing this game a lot, and I'm going to play it a lot in the future. And this has earned a spot in my collection. This isn't going anywhere anytime soon. I really enjoy this. But differing opinions do matter. So, Lynn, how many stars out of 10 would you give to Cursed Court?
6.
So now, Lynn gave it a 6, whereas my 8 means I really, really love this game and I really enjoy playing it. I'm going to want to play it many times in the future. 6 means she likes it, but she has to be in the mood to play it. And this is not really a surprise to me. And this is because this specific style of game, the wagering and the bit of bluffing element to it, is something that Lynn is not a fan of. And if you've watched other videos on my channel a lot, especially some of our countdowns, you know that she hates bluffing. She hates trying to read her opponents because she feels she's no good at it. That being said, rating this as high as a 6 is actually kind of a rave review from Lynn for a bluffing and wagering game, because I'm not positive, but I think that's the highest she has rated anything that uses bluffing and wagering mechanics, either separately or together, of any modern game like that. So there you have it. So 8 stars from me, 6 stars from Lynn. That is I think we can call it a 1.5 thumbs up review from us here at the Board Game Captain. Do you have any comments, questions, or concerns on Cursed Court or this video? Feel free to put them in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this review and tutorial video and you would like to see us do more like it, be sure to give this video a thumbs up, share this video, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the Board Game Captain. That's Captain spelled with a K on YouTube. And hit that little bell icon on my YouTube channel so you get notifications every time I upload a new video. And until next time, game on.